Right. It says we're live. I'm just going to give it 1 second. The live studio isn't really cooperating. Well, at any rate, it's being recorded, so
Okay.
we're good.
I I just went to put my hair in a ponytail and then realized no rubber bands. So
Oh my God. I watched Survivor, and I think the worst possible thing that could happen if you're on Survivor is to lose your hair tie. So if you need to go get your hair tie, I understand.
it's cool.
Okay.
I will survive.
So hello, people. I'm Rachel Archelaus, founder of the Intuitive Art Academy. This is Carrie Roldan. She is our leadership coach. Yeah, and she's really awesome. And thanks for joining us today. We just had a little chat session to see what we want to talk about. And both of us are having strange days where things are happening that, you know, are categorically bad. We're hoping that, the best possible outcomes come about. I'm trying to see it that way, but, one of my oldest friends is having a really serious surgery, and Carrie just got some really terrible news about someone on the team that her daughter is a part of. So we just figured we'd talk about when things aren't going your way,
Yeah.
whether that's the election, a health crisis, financially, friendship wise, love wise. We all have these days where we're just bummed out, where we don't really know what to do with ourselves. So we're going to go there today.
Yeah, well, and as you were talking, Rachel, I was thinking about I'm a firm believer, right, in that we're creating our realities. And my life goes pretty well most of the time, right? And this what happened is one of my daughter's friends' father committed suicide. And it was this shocking text. Of course, heartbreaking, right? I'm heartbroken for his wife and for his daughter um and there's a part of me that's like, hey, whoa, this is not in the life that I create, right? I create rainbows and butterflies, and this isn't how directly affected I am by this in terms of my day to day. Probably not all that much, and yet it's something I'm going, well, what the heck? How did I bring in this energy? And then that feels a little selfish too, right? When thinking about this other
I
these other
know, we
people,
could
what
talk
good they're
about
going.
that
Yeah.
because, just because something that we would categorize as bad is happening doesn't mean we have to feel bad about it. Doesn't mean we have to go down and commiserate and feel the feelings. We can still have our spirit be high, understanding that what's happening is going to be affecting a lot of people, and still seeing those other people with care and compassion, right? But it doesn't mean that we have to be devastated or knocked over by it, which can feel really selfish sometimes. It can feel like you're not doing the right thing. It can feel like, what's wrong with me, that I'm not, more upset. I think we've all had those self judgments.
Or like the judgment I'm having, right, is I'm a big picture person, right? So, and I am a believer that everything that happens is happening for the highest and best of all parties involved, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like a silver lining kind of a person. I'm a look for the upside, fully aware it's socially inappropriate at this moment in time to look for the bright side in this situation. um, yeah, it's just an interesting place to be, right? Knowing, and thank you everyone who's watching, just as like watching, like live processing, but um, holding that um, sadness and grief, and also big picture, right? And like what growth will come from this and all of that. And then, at least for me, I think you struggle with this too. Maybe you don't struggle, right? Maybe you're just maybe you do a better job in it. Um, but there's something in me that wants to like detach from, just detach.
Well,
Yeah,
is it
that's,
detachment or is it knowing that there's always well-being no matter what? Is it detachment or is it just not going to the lower place? I
well,
think,
that's
yeah,
what I'm saying though. But it's in like a social situation or in a conversation, it can feel to other people like detachment.
sure, because they are in a different place. So
Yeah.
it's it's yeah, like when you're looking for connection or understanding, that's where things get wonky because if you're in a different place than someone else, there's not going to be that. But you can still, so with the death thing especially, like I'm a medium, so people always, throughout my whole life, people have asked me to come to their relatives or friends' funerals so that I can talk to them. Like people I barely know will ask me, and I'll go, and the person who's deceased is running around the room going like this and dancing and wanting everyone to know that they're okay. I mean, without fail, every single time. And if it's my family member, sometimes I'm not always like up and high but I understand that like nothing really happened here. Like we're the ones that are missing them. Like they're okay. And so when someone dies, I just do my best to like listen or be there for whatever I need to be, like whoever needs me in the moment. Um, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to be viewing it in a way that something's gone wrong. And you just do the best you can without compromising yourself because that's not going to help anybody. And sometimes sure it might be construed as detached, but really I think we're the only person who's afraid of that. Like they're so wrapped up in their own thing. Are they really going to stop to judge? Are you sad enough right now? Like I think that's just all
Right.
in our heads.
Well, yes, and I think my immediate concern is wanting to. I think I have. You and I have had this conversation a lot, so clearly I have an issue with um, appropriate response, right? Like being appropriate, right? Okay, what is the appropriate response to tell the people who are still here, I care about you and I'm here for you, and also I know there's nothing I can do for you.
Well, there you go. I mean, I think when you're in alignment, you're in your truth. And when you're speaking your truth, that can be felt, whether they agree with it or not, whether they really want you to be a blanket or not. You know what I mean? Like, no one can argue with your truth. And your truth is a beautiful, loving expression. So it's going to feel good on some level, right?
Right.
Yeah. I think a lot of this world is centered around community and negativity or community and feeling bad or like, oh, this tragedy brought us together or I
Like
only see you
commiserating.
all at funerals or yeah, like we're such a strong bunch because we had this bad thing happen like 9/11,
Yes.
all these things. But we know that we don't need to have bad things happen to make a good thing. So if we all just live more in alignment, more in our own truth, and we care less about what's socially appropriate or doing what people expect of us, then more light will shine between us more often.
That
I
one got me to
I
yawn.
do this experiment in class. I'm going to college right now just for one class. It's 4 hours a week, but I'm in a room with a bunch of 20-year-olds, and it's a new thing for me. And at first, I was really self conscious about it and like, do I belong here? And all these thoughts went in my head. And then over time, I was like, I'm just going to show up in alignment. And it's going to be rad. And then I started getting more parts to read because we're table reading for each other, their scripts, and people started talking to me more. And um, it was just like all of the issues that I brought there left because I showed up different. And then I learned from some other person I didn't even know I was older, like, and I'm, almost 20 years older than them. So it's all in our heads. We, like you're saying, we create our lives. So however we show up, whatever we expect, we're going to get.
So on that topic, 'cause it's so funny about how like I agree, and there's some stuff that's showing up for you, right, in the
Yeah.
form of a friend's dream that is like, oh, is this a premonition? Is it um, is it a warning, right? Like, what is it? Um, I don't know how much of that story you want to tell, but like this idea of like, so what is being created? What is being created with that one?
I know. So it's interesting. Um, I have a friend who today is having some surgery done for his heart. And a couple months ago, he had a dream that, his parents, who are both deceased, told him that he was going to die soon and that it was okay. And I have also had those kinds of things. Like, I had my angel group come to me and tell me that I was going to be laid off in a little while and it was okay. This was way back when I was working. And that happened about, I don't know, a couple weeks later. So when they called me into the big office, I knew what was going to happen. I knew it was going to be okay. So sometimes premonitions are absolutely true, and it's just your bigger energy getting you prepared for what's going to be coming so that you can stay calm and know that you're taken care of. So I totally believe in them. He was contacting me to get my advice on it, and I said, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It could be true, it could not be. It could just be like you were mentioning before, like a warning to like live your best life or get things taken care of, check yourself out. Or it could be something totally different, right? Um, and we didn't know he was going to be having surgery today. And so I'm kind of monitoring the situation, seeing if there's an update. And so here I am in a position of like, what do I do? And I'm trying my best to see him as that like perfectly healthy, happy version of himself because that's what I want to happen. And I'm sure that's what everyone wants for him. But of course, I care about this human being, and occasionally there is a worry like, oh, what's going to happen? And that's the part where I'm not beating myself up for it, but I'm trying to watch. Like, it's, it feels to me like I'm being more of a participant, right, in this whole event if I'm worried because that's what everyone else is doing. But I know that that's not helping the situation. So I'm kind of straddling that line.
So do you have a worry? So when you were talking about seeing him as like healthy and whole, right? I'm imagine that you're seeing his non-human self, right? That
No,
he's okay. So that's where I'm like, oh crap, right? Like if I'm this is where I get I think what I'm trying to say is like I'll get wrapped up in my own stuff about like I'm seeing him completely healed and wonderful, and then there's a worry that sneaks in that's like, wait, I want to make sure it's clear that I see him healed and alive,
yeah.
not healed and like um
I mean,
yeah.
that's the honest truth, though, is that whether they are alive or they are passed on, like they're still a perfect being, right? But
Yes.
of course, selfishly, we would like them to be alive, you know,
Yes.
and
I
there's
had
nothing wrong with that.
so I have some I it's not guilt, but it is like hindsight, right? I had a premonition a couple years ago now. um I heard a voice loud and clear that said my neighbor was not going to be around much longer and to take care of his wife. And I argued with them. It sounded like a silly thing, right? Like, what? And then he died within a week. And I have, processed all of that and understand when it's your time, it's your time. And that message was for me not to necessarily, tell him to go to the doctor, but to understand his wife was really going to need us. And yet, I still wish I would have told him to go to the doctor, right? Like, I still wish I would have not dismissed that and said, and tried to change fate, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, what I can say about that as someone who has been given messages as well is that there are an infinite number of paths of least resistance, right? You got one of those, and just because you didn't deliver the message doesn't mean there weren't like thousands of other ways that that was delivered. Like maybe five people told him to go to the doctor, or maybe the doctor called him and wanted to make it. Maybe he had an appointment. Maybe he did go. Like, you know, and I guess it's just getting back to the other thing too is death isn't bad. We think it is. We'd rather it didn't happen, but for someone who for someone who wasn't feeling well, if that was the case, or just, you know, our highest level of happiness here doesn't compare to what we feel when we're not here. So I'm always so happy for someone who's passed on because they're experiencing something that's remarkable. You know what I mean? No, you probably don't know what I mean, but even when it's
I
my
know what you
family,
mean.
there's always that part of it too. It's like I'm always a little happy for them, even if I'm sad.
I know what you mean in theory, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's um, when people die and they have religion, their families have religion to cling to, and they're like, cling to that knowing they're in a better place, right? Or, they're with Jesus now, or whatever their religion has them say. Um, I I feel like that's where we find comfort, but I don't actually know what you're describing that from having like seen it, right? It's a comforting thought to me, but probably not the same excitement and celebration that you're having for.
Yeah, I would imagine. I don't know what it's like to grow up not knowing what happens when you die. I just always knew that. I was always like in communication with people like, when so many people come to you after they died and they're so happy about it, it's hard for that not to make an impression. So I realize I have a different viewpoint than most people, you know?
So I know this wasn't what we were going to talk about, right? We were going to start, but now I'm curious, what happens when you die?
Well, I think the perception of it varies between people, but in a really basic way, like you return to you return to source. You return to where only well-being exists. So here we can feel bad and we can feel good, and sometimes we feel really good, like when we're first in love with someone and it's so amazing and magical and we feel like we could do anything. Like, just imagine that times 100. Like, there's no resistance, there's nothing, like, the thought that there could be anything wrong, it just doesn't exist. Like, that isn't even a possible thought. And so you're just free. You're all the things you want to be while you're here. That just instantly happens there. It's like all of that duality goes away. And you can still retain your personality to talk to people. You can be whoever you want. A lot of times spirits will show up as their most vibrant self when they're talking to a loved one. And that's because that's the most accurate approximation of how we can see them as their vibrant self, right? So they can, they can still retain their personality. They can still talk to us as that being, but they're really source now. Like they're just melded with the love of the universe.
That one made me yawn. I just want to say that that's comforting, right?
Good. Yeah.
And it's not. It's actually nothing that I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's I don't know. It's interesting to talk about. It's not something I think about on the daily. And today I find it interesting that we both showed up here, and so I hope this is powerful for people who are watching, right? Because we both showed. I showed up here having like within minutes before this call, getting the unexpected news of a death, and I don't know, like it seems to me more tragic than somebody who's had a long battle with illness, but
Mm-hmm.
that's also my I don't know what this person's long battle was with, or like that's my projection of it. And you came here sort of holding this space of I don't know, right? Like, is today the day? Which, so for me, it's like this shock, right? And you're still sitting here, like, was it a premonition or was it? And there's also a little bit of attachment to because it's a surgery today. Like today is more likely than, say, a regular Wednesday.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, because he's been ill for the last few months, and I guess today is the day to try to fix it. So
Yeah.
who knows? But I've known this person um, a really long time, and even back when we were kids, he had a lot of health problems. So it's just something that's been on my mind probably since I met him. It's just something that is a part of him.
Now, about that, since you have the ability, since you're a medium, um, I mean, how does I know your humanness is concerned, right, for your friend and
I mean,
wanting
I
them.
think at this point, I'm just curious. Like when I first found out that this was going to be happening today, it was just last night, and so yeah, that was probably concerned. Like, oh, geez, I hope everything's going to be okay. At this point, I'm really just like wondering about it. Like looking for the update. I mean, but I know either way, everything will be okay because the family is choosing it too. Like it's a co-creation with everyone involved. So yeah. But anyway, what was your question?
I think I was going to ask about like, but you get to talk to him later either way.
Yes, it's true. And I always joke about that with my boyfriend. My boyfriend always like jokes to me like when I died, I'll be like, when you die, we're gonna have an even better relationship. Like so, yeah. Yes, it is nice because I know that I really don't have to miss people. And neither do you, even if you're not used to speaking with people on the other side, it's just because it's not that you can't, it's because you never tried or it's never been necessary for you. So I teach people all the time how to talk to spirits and see them and understand how to get in contact with them. If you listen to Abraham Hicks, they talk about that as well because Essler's husband Jerry died a while ago now, and she went through her own little thing of learning how to communicate with him. So even if you can't do it, it doesn't mean that's just how you are. Like everyone can learn. We're all spiritual beings, so we're all the same thing, whether we have a body or not. And these dots are driving me crazy.
I know. I'm watching the dots go in your eyeballs. Okay, this is leading me down a really different path, but
Okay.
my daughter just read this book about the life of Harry Houdini. And I did not know that Harry Houdini was like an avid, I don't know what to call it. He wanted to prove psychics and mediums as charlatans. Like he wanted to prove that um, there was nothing behind the veil, I guess. And it ended a, a friendship, a close friendship that he had because one of his friends, I can't remember who the person was now, but they were somebody famous. Their wife got really into like seances. This was back when like seances, I don't know, first there was a resurgence of seances in this time, and she was believing that she could communicate with the dead, and Harry Houdini's mom had died, and he felt like every person who says that they can communicate with the dead is lying, and but it ended their friendship because he felt like this woman, because the woman in earnest communicated with his dead mother and wrote pages and pages and pages of stuff, and he oh, somebody's calling me, fraud risk is calling me. He felt like it wasn't true and it wasn't his mom, and he had all this stuff. Anyways, so I have felt sometimes like that, to where I'm recently, not a few years ago, so there are some times where I recognize like this neighbor who died, like he's come into my dreams and into my kids' dreams occasionally, and just like there are just moments where I'm like, oh, Richard's nearby, right? And not too long ago, someone I know, their son died, and I didn't know her or him very well, but I was like deeply affected by it. And I remember I took a nap and I was like somewhere in between sleep and wake, and felt like, oh my God, I think he's telling me something. And I wrote it all down, and then I didn't want to give it to her because I felt like, am I making this up, right? And so anyways, all that to be said is, now with the Harry Houdini story, it's like this woman clearly believed she was talking to Harry Houdini's mom, and maybe she was, but he felt like if she were trying to get a message to me, why would she give it in English? She doesn't speak English. Why wouldn't she mention X, Y, or, like he had some like very specific things. Anyway, so I'm wondering about that, right? With the friend, what I wound up doing is sending what I had written to a mutual friend who knew the woman better, and saying, what do you think? Like, do I tell her about this? Do I not tell her about it? And she was like, absolutely, send it to her. And it wound up bringing this woman a lot of comfort. But I'm just curious about that, about that. And is this real? Is it just wishful thinking? Yeah.
Well, in the cases of where you just get a message, usually you can kind of rule out the fact that it's just you, because why would you come up with that? Like, where in your brain would be the advantage to you or the impetus to actually do that if it wasn't actually prompted by something else? That's how I like to go. Like was I thinking that, or did I receive that? You can feel when you're thinking, when you're generating your own thoughts. It's a real difference between receiving a thought. And you can receive a thought from your higher self. It doesn't have to be from someone else, and you can tell. So that's a good first start. Like, did I receive this, or did I think this? And then again, it's a path of least resistance. Like, that kid had something to say, and you were an open vessel, and so there it went to you. And it could have gone to a whole bunch of other people too. You never have to feel like you have to follow through with something if you're uncomfortable about it, or that it'll screw things up, or they'll miss something. Don't ever put that burden on yourself, but again, reach out if you want to. And there are just going to be people who don't believe it's real, even if it's exactly the transmission that was sent. But we all have our own perception that we are working with. Like, we're translating. Just like that lady who was writing in English. She couldn't write in that other language. She wouldn't have been able to understand it. It wouldn't have made sense. So she got an energetic communication and translated it into her own language. So it's not like you're being fed words and sentences. You're being fed an energy packet, and then you can do what you can do with it. Sometimes that means things are lost. Like, there are a lot of psychics and mediums who aren't of the clearest vibration. And so what you get from them isn't going to be as satisfying. So if you're in a position of trying to find a psychic or a medium or something, go with your gut. Find someone who is highly recommended. Find someone who you gel with, because you'll have a better chance of getting something that will be meaningful to you.
So on that note, I was watching on Netflix. There's the Goop Lab. It's Gwyneth Paltrow's. It's just a bunch of fun episodes on cool stuff that they're exploring, and it's a lot of energy work and mediumship and opening your psychic abilities and all of that. And there's an episode where there's this woman who is really resistant to the idea of like a psychic medium, that anyone could talk to her relatives who have passed on. But she's like, I want it to be true, I just don't believe in it. And so she's sitting down with a very reputable medium, and the medium keeps like telling her things about, her loved one who's passed on, and she's got some specific things, but you could see how it would. And she's like, no, not exactly. And she keeps going, and it kind of looks like you start to get nervous, like, is this woman a phony? Because it kind of looks like she's grasping at straws, and she's sort of saying things like, well, it could be that or whatever, but I'm getting this, and it gets like more and more far-fetched, like, and there's a donkey, and you're like, what? And the woman's like, no, none of that, no. And you're just like feeling like, oh man, this woman's a total crackpot, right? And then they stop the film, they kind of pan out to like the whole film crew, and one of the women behind the camera is just pouring tears, and they say, I think you're reading her, right? Like, I think this is what's happened. And she goes on to then say how all of those things that the medium had touched upon, how they were exactly right? Like, she knew how it all fit together. Anyways, when you were talking about like the open vessel, it was in that particular room, the person who wanted the reading actually didn't want the reading. And the woman who was just behind the camera was, I just find that interesting.
That's the other thing, like, if you are going, make sure that you're at least open. It doesn't mean you have to say a lot, right? But it means you're open to receiving it, because I used to actually work as a medium a long time ago, and I had no problems except for this one time where this woman walked in, and I could see her mother was like hovering around her head, and she sat down and she said, I really, really need to talk to my mom. And I just like, nothing happened. Like, I couldn't hear anything. Everything stopped. Nothing. It was like complete, like an engine seizing up, like no movement, nothing. And it's because this woman was so desperate to talk to her mother that no message would be able to get in. Because desperation just like puts this cage around you. Like, you can't receive when you're desperate. And you can't receive when you're so like stuck on not believing something is true. So if you do go, just try to be relaxed and open, and you can still be critical, and you can still make up your own mind. But yeah, you probably won't get anything if you're like so stuck and set that it doesn't work.
Well, I love the two things that you just said, because they apply so much bigger than just receiving messages from the beyond.
Yeah, for everything. Yes.
You can't receive in desperation. Like, I'm thinking how many times money-wise that's been true for me. And what was the other thing you said? It was, it was basically about limiting beliefs, right? You also can't receive if, like, just because, I'm thinking money as well, right? Like, just because you want to be a millionaire, but if you believe that you can't be, you won't be. Mm-hmm. So there we go.
Yeah, and sometimes desire can like overthrow those limiting beliefs, but if your belief is bigger than your desire, then it's not going to happen. I loved all this conversation. I used to be a regular guest on the podcast, The Death Chicks, and I used to talk about this stuff. Yeah, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, I forgot. Well, this is just an interesting... I love that we're back to doing these live streams. And every time I get like a little bit nervous before, like, what are we going to talk about? And then the conversation just goes where it goes. So it went from like us showing up here thinking, at least I was thinking, like, okay, how do I get myself in the place to where I can help people, deal with keeping their vibration high when bad things happen? And turned into kind of a deep conversation about death and dying and mediumship and what happens after you die and all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
And finishing up with like the universal truths of, well, I guess it's where we started, right? With where your vibration is what matters.
I think, but this idea, wow, I can't believe it's almost been an hour. I had
I
no
know.
idea. Um, I love I love the topic of this appropriateness because I feel like when you keep living your truth, like when you're doing this journey that we're on of like taking up more space in our lives and allowing in the things that we're wanting, we become a lot less socially acceptable because we're thriving, we're happy, we're allowing, we're prosperous. Whatever is happening for us is probably making us a little bit less relatable, right? That I hate that term. Like, who the fuck cares if you're relatable? But having confidence from that place is the only thing that we really need. Having confidence in yourself and your alignment. So, as I've been on this journey, I've started caring a lot less about what is appropriate and being appropriate because as long as you're feeling good, you can probably guess that the path ahead is clear. You know, it's when we're worried about what others are going to think, when we're trying to pre plan conversations, when we're, guessing what's in the heads of other people. That's when we step in our own, what. Like, that's when we create the situations that don't feel good because we're already not feeling good. So, that's where intuitive art can help you too. If you're feeling insecure about something, go to your intuitive art. How can I feel better about this? How can I gain more confidence around this? How can I feel more comfortable in the world being my real self? That's always a good one.
So I have one more question. And I like the idea of using intuitive art in this situation with this, in my appropriate response as, because there is, I'll be honest, right? I'm in this person's life, I have a couple of roles,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so under which role am I playing in the moment, and what's appropriate for each role. And while I recognize the most appropriate thing is alignment, right? Like the most appropriate thing is alignment. Um, I also just want to make sure I follow protocol and I'm doing the right things within the system that we're working in. But you said something that got me because I think it's feelings are very interesting, right? Like I find them interesting that like you could be like me today having a great day, then got a text that instantly, right? The news instantly shifted me. But also, I don't remember what you said that got me thinking down this path, but I'm sure that a lot of people are watching are like me we are empaths. Oh, it was relatable. So I am told all the time that I'm relatable. And I actually don't think that as a human I'm all that relatable, but I relate well to other people because I can feel what they're feeling. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, you're a harmonizer.
okay. So talk to me about that.
Well, it's advantageous for us to harmonize with people, to feel what they're feeling and calibrate to them because right then, yeah, they talk to us, they feel comfortable around us, we're not threatening to them, we're the same as them. Everyone wants to feel like they're the same as someone else because they're not alone. And so it's a comforting thing to them. But does it knock you off your perch? Like, do you lessen your vibration in order to do that? And if you do, is it worth it? Right? Is it worth it to go down in order to make someone else feel comfortable when you're not feeling comfortable yourself? So it's just something that you've got to ask yourself, because you're in control of your energy. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Sometimes empaths feel like they're just the victims and that's just what happens to them, but it's not true. Um, it might not happen overnight, but you can gain control of you, and you can find a place where you feel good and stay there no matter who's in front of you. And that's really the work, because once you decide, I'm just going to be me, I'm going to show up as me, I'm going to be the gift of me, I'm going to offer my vibration to the other person so that they have a chance of getting up instead of me lowering myself down, and so that they feel more comfortable. Maybe I'll just stay where I am and give them the opportunity to see what that feels like. So maybe inspire them to a higher vibration instead of going down and comforting them where they are. You know, so it's a big deal when you start thinking about it like that, because then you create from your place of alignment instead of whoever shows up and wherever they are. That you're kind of all over the place if you just calibrate to whoever is around you, right? You're going to get a real mixed bag of creations that way.
Yes. Yes. And how I found it helpful, I think I've done this my whole life and not really known that I was doing it, right? But is people feel seen, heard, and valued because I always say, I hear what you're not saying. I don't know if that's really right, but like, I'm saying words to them that they couldn't find because I've harmonized with them.
Mm-hmm.
But because I want to always be, right, I want to stay up here, what I tend to do is then quickly climb the ladder, right? Like, I can meet you where you are, but I'm not staying there. I can hear where you are, and here's where we're gonna go together or not. Yeah, which is interesting, right? Which is probably why I'm in the line of work that I'm in, and why I attract the kind of people that I do. Is like, they do feel seen, heard, and valued for wherever they are, but they don't want to stay there.
Right. Which is good,
Yeah.
because it always feels better to go up.
Yeah. And at least for me, which is probably again why I do the work that I do, it feels amazing to take people with you, or to not do it alone, or to, to be, I think we've talked about this before, but be surrounded by like-minded people moving in the same direction. And so I think I know that's also something that I am, I'm just a vision caster. So people tend to climb into that vision or not relatively quickly. And I'm probably fairly oblivious to the people who don't, right? Like,
And that's the thing, is that because we're creating from the vibration of where we are, if you don't spend a lot of time where those unhappy people are, they're not going to show up for you, right? And I can tell you that, because I will rarely meet someone in a lower place, they don't show up for me, and I can't be with them. If I'm with them and something happens and they want to go there, I'm out of there. And it's not even like an intellectual decision. It's just a see ya. Like, and that's been happening a lot more this past few months, and it's a big change for me. Like, it's just a non-negotiable. And at first I was like, oh, I was worried, right? Again, the whole relatable thing about like, where am I? Where am I? Like, how is anyone going to find me? How am I going to have a social life? But the people are there. I mean, the same friends, like no friends have left. You know, it's an interesting thing where you really do, your whole world outside of you is based on what's in here and what you're willing to tolerate. And when you stop tolerating things you don't like, man, it gets even cleaner and happier and more wonderful. So it's a really big topic, and I doubt we've even made sense about it, but it's really fun to like do something internally, feel a certain way for a while, and then see it show up for you.
I'm just gonna like soak that in for a minute because yes, yes, and it's at least for me like it's happening all the time, right? It's happening all the time, but I tend to be deliberate about it when I want it to be something good, right? And then notice it's not work it's not working when I've just let go of my practice of um, choosing to feel good, right? Choosing what I tolerate, basically, or what I won't tolerate. Yeah,
Nice.
Rachel. I know we talked about a lot of good stuff today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll let you all go now. If you do some intuitive art around anything we've talked about, go to our Facebook group and post it. We would love, love, love to see it. It's if you just search Intuitive Art Academy on Facebook, you'll find us. And we hope you have a really wonderful day. Carrie and I are planning to do these every other week, so look out for that, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Carrie.